Hello and very welcome everyone to the session of Ancient History Part 1. In today's session, we are going to discuss the topic that are related to the part of ancient history. That means we are going to see the introduction of history. We are going to see that how and from where the history was recorded. And we will also see the type of things that are essential for understanding the history. So let's start and see what are the things we can learn. And before we start, the images, text, and other materials used in our presentations are for educational purpose only. We respect the intellectual property rights of the original creators and owners. If you are the owner and have any concerns or issues, please contact us at sathi@iitk.ac.in and we shall remove the same. So let's introduce the history. Let's see that what is the definition of history basically, and let's start. So first of all, the thing is that history is the study of the past in relation to present developments and future hopes. So basically, whoever of you are studying history for the first time or have studied history in your childhood, so you must be thinking that why we are required to read it and why do we need to understand that what happened earlier, 800 years back or 700 years back. So basically, if you want to understand that what is going on in present, what is the political scenario in present, what are the type of cultures that we are particularly prevailing in our society in present, so you need to understand the past first of all, and that also defines your future as well, because if we see an individual, so whatever type of past he lived, the type of situation he is in present, and most probably the same situation will be there in the future. So that is the what history is all about. So that is the history. If we are studying history, so we are basically relating the past, present, and the future. Then history is a chronological record of significant events. This is a very simple thing. So whatever happened in history are in chronology, and we need to understand it in chronology like a story. So whenever you are reading history, always remember that you don't need to cramp everything. You don't need to just read out everything. You need to understand. And then according to that, you can align the dates. That would be very helpful for you. Okay, let's move further. So it is a branch of knowledge that records and explains past events. The word history is derived from the Greek word historia, originally meant inquiry, the act of seeking knowledge as well as the knowledge that results from inquiry. So do remember that history came from a Greek word called historia, and the German historian Leopold von Ranke is known as the father of modern source-based history. So do remember this name as well. So German historian Leopold von Ranke is known as the father of modern source-based history. So basically, he was the one who started recording all these things. Then Herodotus, very famous name, was the first called the father of history because he was the first historian to systematically record the events that happened. So Herodotus was the one who basically who started recording all the things, not in a camera, obviously, but in a written form at that time. So that is why Herodotus is famously known as the father of history. And if we talk about the father of modern source-based history, so that was Leopold von Ranke. Then let's talk about some of the people who particularly said something about history, like Voltaire. Voltaire said that history is nothing but a pack of tricks we play on the dead. So, according to him, whatever history we are reading is the history of the dead people, and everyone is talking history in his own way. That is why he said that we are all, history is nothing but a pack of tricks we play on the dead. Let's read further more about it. Then came John Jacob Anderson, and he said that history is a narration of the events which have happened among mankind, including an account of the rise and fall of nations, as well as of other great changes which have affected the political and social conditions of the human race. So when we talk about the John Jacob Anderson, so John Jacob Anderson was the person basically who said that it is a narration of the events that happened with the mankind. And apart from that, it is also tells about the nations, how the nation rose and how it falls. And some other big basic changes or great changes happened and affected the political system and social conditions of the society. So these are all the things that is according to John Jacob Anderson. Then came James Joyce. So he said that history, Stephen said, is a nightmare from which I am trying to awake. So basically, according to James, so he has another thing in his mind apart regarding history. He said that it is a nightmare, and a nightmare from which we are all trying to awake. So whomever of you are concerned with this point, so whatever past you had, so you have some people have some kind of traumas, and your whole life they particularly fear that point, particular in their life. So that is why it has also been called as the night. Now, according to NCRT, what the history is? So, history is a scientific study of past happenings in all their aspects in the life of a social group in the light of present happening. So, it is a kind of a same definition that we read earlier also. That what is history all about? So, history is a basically scientific study of all the aspects, and it tells about the life of the society, and apart from that also it provides light on the present happenings, what are the happenings, what are the things happening in present situation. Then Jawaharlal Nehru, the history is the story of man's struggle through the ages against nature and elements, against wild beasts and the jungle, and some of his own kind who have tried to keep him down and to exploit him for their own benefit. So somewhere in in these whole lines said by Jawaharlal Nehru, you can clearly see that he was somewhere talking about the Britishers, that how the same kind of people, the particular people of same kind, they have kept someone of the same kind in down from them and also tried to exploit them. So that was done. And apart from that, if we talk about, so Jawaharlal Nehru also said that it is against the nature and it is also the struggle of a man against the nature and the elements that happen. Now let's study about the concept of BC and AD. So you must have seen aligned with the number of dates. BC is aligned and AD is aligned. Let's see what it is all about. So first of all, the term AD and BC basically belongs to Christianity. So yes, it is all true. But if we go into the basic principles that what the BC and AD is all about. So according to Christianity, BC is before the birth of Christ and AD is after the death of Jesus. But if we go into the common thing, according to the common historians, not only from Christianity, so BC was basically also written as BCE, that is before Common Era, and AD is written as Common Era, that is CE. So somewhere you will find CE to be written. So CE is nothing, but you can compare it with AD. Like today, the year is 2025. So we will say 2025 AD, or we can also say 2025 CE. Okay, but we cannot say 2024 BC, because BC is also, do remember, is the time, or BCE is the time that is known as before Common Era. So particular time has been defined before which the events happened are termed as BCE. And in Christianity, that time was the birth of Jesus. So the time Jesus born, before that time, the time was called BC, and after that time was called AD. So AD also stands for Anno Domini. That is another thing, and it refers specifically to the birth of Jesus Christ in the year of Lord. It is true according to Christianity that Anno Domini basically defines this thing, but Anno Domini also means particularly the time of a common era. Okay, so that also defines it, and this is all the time just after the death of Jesus. And BC stands for before Christ and refers specifically to before the birth of Jesus Christ. So that is all basically the meaning of BC. Then in recent years, an alternative form of BC AD has gained traction. Many publications use CE or Common Era and BCE or before Common Era in order to make non-Christians, as I was telling you. So that is all written here. So I hope this pointers or this concept of AD and BC and CE and BCE is clear to everyone. Now let's read about some of the history glossary. First is the anachronism. Anachronism, if we talk about an artifact that belongs to another time. So this term defines the artifact of the another time. So do remember, anachronism defines the artifact of another time. Then chronological order. And chronological order tells about the listing events in the order that they occurred. So that is basically called a chronological order. That is a simple thing. Then era or period. So a period of time that is joined by historical factors. For example, industrial era are basically called eras or period. So whenever we are saying, like, for example, we are saying Gandhian era. So Gandhian era was basically starts from 1915, because according to the historians, that was the time when Gandhiji came back to India, and it remained till 1948. So basically the Gandhian era was from 1915 to 1948. So that is basically called the era. Okay. And it particularly defines a person's or any particular events or any particular things life, a lifetime or particularly time in which the events happened or related to that individual or related to that industry or related to anything else. So that's all about it. Then comes year, a unit of time equal to 12 months. So that is basically called the year. That is a simple thing. Then comes decade, a unit of time that is equal to 10 years. That is also a simple thing. I don't think it requires any explanation. Then century, a unit of time that is equal to 100 years. Like we are saying the 19th century. So do remember one thing, that if we are saying 19th century, then that means that from 1800 to 1899. Okay. And if we are saying 20th century, then that means 1900 to 1999. If we are saying 21st century, then that means 2000 to 2000, 2100 years. So that means 21st century. I hope this point is clear to everyone. Then millennium, a unit of time that is equal to 1000 years, like from 1000 AD to 2000 AD. This is the time of millennium. Okay, so basically these are called the different types of time eras that are used in history. Now, phases of Indian history. We are basically more concerned towards Indian history. So let's read about the different phases of Indian history. So the phases of Indian history are mentioned below. First is the ancient history, prehistoric to 647 AD, and from Stone Age to death of Harshvardhan. So basically, when we talk about the prehistoric to 647 AD, so 647 AD is the time, is the year in which Harshvardhan died and Vardhan dynasty abolished or destroyed. And prehistoric is the time when the, around 2 lakh or 3 lakh or up to 5 lakh years back, when the history of humankind started. And in that particular time, the humans particularly reached the Indian subcontinent and they started living here as a particular Stone Age person and all that. So that is the time of prehistory. Then the medieval history starts from 647 AD to 1757 AD. That is from death of Harshvardhan to Battle of Plassey. So if we talk about the death of Harshvardhan, so we all know it, he died in 647 AD, and on 23rd June 1757, on a Sunday, the Battle of Plassey was fought between the Robert Clive and Sirajuddaula, and this is the time when particularly Britishers started dominating in Indian subcontinent. They got the control of Bengal, and in next 50 years, basically, in next only in 50 years, or you can say 60 years, they got the control of the major subcontinent of India below Satluj River, and above Satluj River was the Sikh Empire, only empire that remained independent from Britishers, not for very long, but till 1848. Then comes the modern history, that is 1757 to 1947. That means the Battle of Plassey to Indian independence. So basically, on 15th of August, India got independence. So the time between 1757 to 1947, India, particularly the history of India, is basically called the modern history, and that is why we also say that we remained a slave for almost 200 years of Britishers. So that is why this point is being said here. Now let's talk about the prehistoric times first. So firstly, the point is that history from the Greek word historia, meaning inquiry, knowledge acquired by investigation, is the study of the past. History is an umbrella term that relates to past events as well as the discovery, collection, organization, presentation, and interpretation of information about these events. So basically, when we talk about history, so that is all written here. What is the basic meaning of history? So history basically means inquiry, and knowledge acquired by investigation is the study of past, and that we already talked about, and also known as the event as well as the discovery, collection, organization, and other events happen during that particular time. Now it is divided into prehistory, proto-history, and history. Let's see what it is all about. So prehistory, proto-history, and history. Let's see what it is all about in the next slide also. So let's read about them now. So first of all, prehistory, proto-history, and history. So let's see. First of all, let's see about prehistory. So prehistory is the time during the development of human culture before the appearance of the written word. So we all know that there was a very long time in which humans started having curiosity. They started converting or transforming from an ape to a human, and that took around more than lakhs of years for the humans to be transformed. And after that, after getting transformed, it all also take another thousands of years so that the humans can get to know about how they can use farming, how they can particularly um, create or fire, how they can particularly use another other things that are found near him, and how they can create their own shelter, how they started living in a group, so how they started a civilization. So that particular time took a particular number of years. So before all these was started, the time was called prehistory. And information, and also one more thing, that anything was not written about that time, because at that time the people didn't know that how to write. The only way we get to know about them is about from their rocks, weapons that they have created, or rock utensils they have created, and also from the paintings. Like there is an example of that in India, that Bhimbetka caves in Madhya Pradesh. They are famous for the cave paintings that, according to the historians, they say that these are particularly created by the by those people who lived firstly or primarily in Indian subcontinent, and that were the first human in India. So that is called the time, and that is how we came to know about them. Then information about prehistoric time is collected by archaeologists by excavating and studying the remains, as I was saying, for instance, the Stone Age. And in that case also they studied the paintings and other things as well. Then comes the proto-history. So proto-history is the time just before the earliest recorded history. Written records about proto-historic times are few, and a script is yet to be decoded. So that is basically the time of history, basically called a proto-history. And then comes the for instance, the Indus Valley civilization. But also one more thing, that is also written here, that the script is yet to be decoded. That means that basically the script of Indus Valley people are known as Bostrofodon. In that particular script, two type of things are used. One are the letters, and the other one is the pictures. And that too written from in one line from left to right, and then second line from right to left. So that is why it is also very difficult to decode it. And still we are not having any kind of idea that how what is written in their scripts. And recently, the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister, Mr. Stalin, he also particularly declared an award that whoever of the people of this country will be able to decode the script of Indus Valley civilization, they will be awarded with money from Mr. Stalin. So that is another thing that you can clearly understand, that how the script of Indus Valley civilization is still under observation. Then comes the part of history. So history is a continuous, typically chronological record of event. Information about historic time can be collected through various source written as well as archaeological things. And for instance, the Vedic age. So if someone asks you that when was Gautam Buddha born, and when was the Alexander attacked on India, when was the Mauryan Empire remained in India, and how they created. So we have lot of books by that time that particularly tells us, or tells us at least something, that we can at least understand that during this time the Mauryans were there and ruling in this country. And that we get to know from different type of written books, inscriptions, stone inscriptions, and copper inscriptions of that time. And other than that, we also get to know from different type of books written by different historians like Megasthenes, Ibn Battuta, Huenzang, Fahian, Nicole de Conti, Al-Baruni. So all these particular historians helped us a lot in getting the information about this type of era. Now let's read about the construction of ancient Indian history. So basically, the sources which help in reconstructing history are, first are non-literary sources, which include coins, material remains, inscriptions, etc. So if we talk about the non-literary sources that tells us about the ancient history, are the things like inscriptions, which I was saying, copper inscription, stone inscriptions, or we can also talk about some type of inscriptions that are being written on the walls, on the rocks, and all these things. Apart from that, the material remains, like we also find stupas of that time, the stupas built by Ashok, the stupas built by other kings of that time, the stupas built after the death of or the Mahaparinirvana of Gautam Buddha. So these type of things are called non-literary sources. And also the coins, the major source are coins, guys, because whenever we get a coin of any particular era, so we get to know a particular certain number of things related to it, that what are the particular type of things happened at that time, what particular is written on the coins, what type of inscription is there on the coins. Like for example, if I tell you, the coin was a start there was a coin started by Samundragupta, and on the basis of that coin, the name is given to Samudragupta, that is called Kaviraj. Why it is given? Because on those coins, Samudragupta showed himself playing Veena. So we get to know two very important things. One is that Samudragupta used to play Veena, and he was one of the king who used to play Veena. Other than that, a name is also given to him that is called Kaviraj. Other than that, if we talk about inscriptions, so we get to know a lot from the inscriptions, like from the Allahabad pillar. The Allahabad pillar was basically built by Ashok. So it has also the inscriptions of Ashok. Then Samudragupta. Samudragupta Valor or Samudragupta bravery was written by Harishen, a poet in his court, and that was written on Allahabad pillar. And that is famously known as Prayag Prashasti. That tells us about all the wars that were fought by Samudragupta and won. So by that, we also give the name Napoleon of India to Samudragupta. That is the name given by V.A. Smith. So these type of things are happening here. Also, if we talk about the Allahabad pillar, so Allahabad pillar has also inscriptions of Jahangir. So we get to know that particularly the inscription of Jahangir. Cut. So particularly if we talk about the inscription of Jahangir, so Jahangir's inscription is basically written in the form of Jahangir's inscription is basically written in the form of text written on that Allahabad pillar. So we get to know that Allahabad pillar tells us about three important things. One is about Ashok, then Samudragupta, then Jahangir. So that is the important. And some literary sources we also have, which include religious literature and secular literature. So these are some other resources. Like if we talk about literature resources, or literary sources. So we have some particular books which tells us about the Mahajanpads of that time that belongs to Buddhism. So lot of books from Buddhism tells us about the Mahajanpad. Lot of books from Jainism also tells us about the Mahajanpads. And these books also tells us about the religious things and secular things of that time. That what type of religious customs are being followed at that time. Then comes the non-literary sources. So coins, basically, ancient Indian currency came in the form of coin as paper was not in existence. The earliest coins found in India had only a few symbols. Punch marked coins made of silver and copper, but later coins mentioned the names of the kings, gods, and dates, etc. The location where they were discovered show the area in which they circulated. This allowed the history of multiple reigning dynasties to be reconstructed, especially during Indo-Greek rule, who came to India from northern Afghanistan and ruled India in the second and first. So basically, coins tells us a lot. Okay, so first of all, the coins will tell us the type of economy that was flowing at that time, because most of the kings of that time at the starting were using gold coins, silver coins, but later they also started using copper coins and lead coins and other type of coins. And apart from that, it also have a kind of an inscription on it that tells us that from which era or which king or god or dates it belongs to. So that is why the coins are one of the more non-literary source. Then it tells us about the area, that particularly because the coins are being circulated in certain areas, and when they are being circulated, and that tells us about the type of use the coins have at that time, and who was particularly circulating. Then it also tells us about the type of peoples that are coming to India. Like for example, when we talk about the Greeks, so Greeks came into India as soon as Alexander came, and after Alexander was particularly gone away from India, so a settlement of Greek people also settled around the particular boundaries of India, and they created the Bactrian kingdom. And that Bactrian kingdom later also intervened into the Indian subcontinent, and they started a dynasty called Indo-Greek. Indo-Greeks were the first was the first dynasty that introduced the gold coin, and later that gold coin was majorly circulated by Kushan Empire also, because at that time the gold coins were in major use in dealing with the Roman Empire. So these type of things basically tells us a lot about that what type of economy and who were the kings of that time on the basis of inscriptions of date, kings, and gods of that. Some more non-literary sources. So BCE coins provides insights on the economic history of different dynasties and also provide input on different parameters involved, such as the script, art, religion of that time. It also assists in understanding the advancement achieved in metallurgy, science, and technology. The study of coins is called numismatics. So that is another thing. Metallurgy is also very important. Lot of coins of that time were made of bronze and copper, silver, gold. So we get to know that these people particularly know which type of metal at that time and how they are particularly using it. So it also tells us about the type of metallurgy and the type of things of that time that were going on. Some more about it. Now, archaeology and material remains. So, archaeology is the study that deals with the methodical excavation of old mounds in successive layers in order to establish a concept of the material lives of the people. Like, for the best example is Indus Valley civilization. The Indus Valley civilization was basically buried inside the soil, and it was excavated after particularly John Marshall saw some people getting bricks out of that particular soil and using it to create their own house or something. So at that time particularly he started excavating, and he get to know that there was a large site that was buried inside that particular area. So that is a kind of a thing. Then material remnants found during excavation and exploration are submitted to a variety of studies. That is a simple thing. Their dates are fixed according to radiocarbon dating. So, particular type of scientific formula that we use to determine the age of any archaeological excavation material is the radiocarbon dating. Under this, the C14 isotopes of carbon are being counted, and every isotope particularly tells us about a period of time, which particularly that particular material belongs to. So that is the thing written. Then, for example, excavated sites belongs to the Harappan period, help us to know about the life of the people who lived in that era. Similarly, the megaliths, grave in South India, throw light on the life of the people living in the Deccan and South India before 300 BCE. The study of plants remnants, particularly pollen analysis, reveals the history of climate and vegetation. So the most important source you can say it is, and that is the archaeological study of all the different type of things that tells us a lot about the time period, about the type of society, and also tells us about the vegetation and climate of that time. Some more about it. Now, when we talk about inscriptions and prashastis, so I already told you an example about it, about the Allahabad pillar. Let's read more. So, epigraphy is the study and interpretation of ancient inscriptions. So, inscriptions are nothing but particularly written on the walls, on the rocks, on pamphlets of made of rocks, and also on pillars. Like there were a lot of pillars and rock inscriptions are found related to Ashok. Also, some inscriptions are found related to Sak era, like Junagadh inscription is related to the Sak era. Then, if we talk about some more inscriptions, so Allahabad pillar tells us about Samudragupta as well. So, these particular inscriptions are the best source of getting to know about these particular people. The only thing is that we can decode their language. Like most of the inscriptions of Ashok were written in Brahmi, Kharosti, Aramic, and Greek. So James Prinsep is recognized as a person who decoded the Brahmi language. So these decoding of language is also very important in way to understand the thing. Then engraved writings on hard surface such as stone, metals such as copper, which generally record certain achievements, thoughts, royal commands, and choices, aid in comprehending diverse faiths and administrative systems of that era. For example, inscriptions detailing state policy issued by Emperor Ashok and inscriptions recording the land grants by Satvahan, kings of the Deccan. So these particular type of things were introduced at that time, and inscriptions and prasastis are basically created, as I was giving you an example. Then comes the foreign accounts. So foreign accounts can enhance indigenous writings. The Greek, Chinese, and Romans travelers to India, whether as explorers or religious converts, left behind a comprehensive record of our history. Some of the notables among them were Megasthenes, a Greek ambassador, wrote Indica and supplied vital information on modern society and governance. So he was one of the first type of ambassador or traveler, you can say, who visited, and he recorded lot of things related to the modern era. And apart from him, there were certain different other travelers also who came during the time of different type of kings, and they recorded different things. As I gave you an example, like Fayan came in the court of Vikramaditya, that is Chandragupta II. Then Huenzang came in the court of Harshvardhan. Then, if we talk about the other ones, like the people like Al-Baruni, Firdausi, then Barani, Nicole de Conti, Abdul Razak. So all these people basically came and they tell a lot about the history. They travel throughout the Indian subcontinent, and then they wrote a lot about the different type of kings found at that time in different particular places. So these are the most important sources. First is the inscriptions, and another one is the foreign account. Now let's talk more on this. The Periplus of the Erythraean Sea and Ptolemy's geography, both written in Greek, give valuable information about the ports and commodities of trade between India and the Roman Empire. So these are the two books written in Greek. One is the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, and the another one is the Ptolemy's geography. Ptolemy is also famously known as the father of geography because he was the person who coined this word geography. And according to these two particular work, we get to know a lot about the ports and commodities and the type of trade were happening at that time between the India and the Roman Empire. As I was saying, also Fayan and was here from 337 CE to 422 CE. That means AD also. A Buddhist traveler and left a vivid account of the age of the Guptas. Do remember that he came during the time of Vikramaditya, that was Chandragupta second. So he gave a lot of information about that era. And Huenzang, a Buddhist pilgrim, visited India and described India under the reign of King Harshvardhan as well as the magnificence of the Nalanda University because he was one of the student of Nalanda University and also the one who particularly studied and later became teacher also in Nalanda University, and he was also known as the Prince of Pilgrim because he was the one who took this Buddhism towards China as well. Now let's talk about some literary sources. So, religious literature. Religious literature shares information on the ancient Indian period social, economic, and cultural situations. Some of the sources are the four Vedas, very important, guys. So, when we get to know about the social, economic, and political type of system or cultural system, so these type of books are really important. So, the four Vedas are really important. The Vedas may be assigned to 1500 to 500 BCE, and Rig Ved mainly contained prayers, while the later Vedic texts, Samved, Yajurved, Atharvaved, comprises not only prayers but rituals, magic, and mythological stories as well. So basically, the four Vedas are the primary source that tells us a lot about the Vedic civilization. If you only read about the Rig Ved, so you will get to know the religious system, the political system, the administrative system, and the social society of the early Vedic age. And if you read about the later Vedic age, about the Samved, Yajurved, Atharved, so you get to know a lot about the society of later Vedic age and how the transformation or how much change were there between the early Vedic age and later Vedic age. Then we get to know about Upanishads. So the philosophical discussion on Atma and Paramatma are found in the Upanishads, that is Vedanta. So Upanishad, first of all, is the word that means is that the students who learned about Vedas from their teacher or gurus or rishis, and they wrote some particular things into their notebooks, and those notebooks are basically called as the Upanishads. So that is the meaning of this word Upanishad. And do remember that Upanishads are written by the students who learned a lot from their teachers about the Vedas. And it also tells us about the universe, how the universe was founded, or universe origin of universe, and some other important things like spirituality and other things also. And that is why it also provides a discussion on Atma and Paramatma, and that is found in Upanishads. And they are also called Vedant because and of Vedas. It is also termed as the and of Vedas. We total Upanishads we have are 108. Then let's move some other literary sources of that time. Epics of Mahabharata and Ramayana, very important. So whenever you are reading the Mahabharata and Ramayana, so you must have heard about a lot of Janpads or Mahajanpads of that time. Like if we say that the area that were given to Pandavas when that kind of compromise was done between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, so that place is Indraprasth. And Indraprasth, we all know, was the capital of the Kuru Rashtra. That was a Mahajanpad. Then if we go to Kampilya or Kampila, so Kampila was the place that was ruled by Drupad, who was the father of Princess Draupadi, and the particular area was basically called a place where Panchal was the place where, if we talk about Panchal is the place which is the capital of that area. So that is another type of source that you can understand. So I hope you are able to understand that epics of Mahabharata and Ramayana also tells us a lot about these Mahajanpads. So let's read more. So Mahabharata is the elder of the two epics and may depict the conditions of events from the 10th century BCE to the 4th century CE. It originally had 8800 verses named the Jaya Samhita. So first name of Mahabharata was Jaya Samhita. The final compilation increased the number of verses to 1 lakh, which became known as the Mahabharata or Sata Sahasri Samhita. It contains narrative, descriptives, and di- didactic materials. The Ramayana originally consisted of 12,000 verses, which were later raised to 24,000 verses. This epic also has its didactic portions, which were added later. And basically, the Mahabharata, if we talk about, was basically written by Lord Ganesha and was said by Ved Vyas. But if we talk about Ramayana, so originally the Ramayana was written by Valmiki. So Rishi Valmiki. And if we talk about all these particular epics, so they tells us a lot about the different type of things of that time. Then comes the sutras. Sutras include ritual literature such as Shrauta Sutras, which include sacrifices and royal coronation, and Griha Sutras, which cover household rituals such as birth, name, marriage, death, and so on. So they are different, another type of literary sources which tells us about the different type of rituals that were being used at that time during the time of Vedic period. Then let's talk about more on these sources. Then comes the Buddhist religious text. So the early Buddhist writings were written in Pali and are often referred to as the Tripitak. That are the three baskets. Sut Pitak, Vinay Pitak, Abhidham Pitak. These books shed essential information on the era's social and economic situation. They also make allusions or to political events from the Buddha's time. So basically, if we talk about the Sut Pitak, so Sut Pitak tells us about the sermons of Gautam Buddha. Vinay Pitak tells us about the rules and regulations to remain in the Sangh. And Abhidham Pitak tells us about the philosophy of Buddhism. So these are the another three books that tells us about the era of Buddhism, or particularly the time period in which Buddhism prevails in our country. Then comes the Jainas religious texts. So Jainas texts commonly known called as Angas and were written in the Prakrit language. Do remember that Buddhist texts were written in Pali and Jains were written in Prakrit and contain philosophical concepts of the Jains. They contain several manuscripts that aid in the reconstruction of Mahavir's political history in eastern Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. The Jain writings make several references to commerce and traders. So they all not only tells us about the religious things of Buddhism and Jainism, but these books also tells us about the society and about the different type of things happening at that time, or the different type of political structures being constructed at that time. Then let's talk about some secular literature. Then let's talk about some secular literature. So there is also a large body of secular literature such as Dharam Shastra or law books. These specify the responsibilities of several varnas as well as the monarchs and their officers. They provide the rulers for holding, selling, and inheriting property. They also impose penalties on those who commit theft, murder, and other crimes. So basically, these books tells us about the rules and regulations regarding that were specified by the monarchs, and they also tells us about that how the properties are being inherited by the people, holded and sold at that time, and different type of penalties imposed on different people. One is Arthashastra. So Arthashastra of Kautilya reflects the state of society and economy in the ages of the Mauryas, written by Chanakya. So Arthashastra even today is very parallel to the things that we can understand and we can implement. So in today's world also we can use this book to understand and implement the things in the political and economical structure of any country. And still many of the people are influenced from this book, and this was the primary source of things of that time. Then if we talk about the literary work of Kalidas, so Kalidas' work include kavyas and plays. the most notable of which is Abhi Janan Shakuntalam. They are not only creative captions creations, but they also provide insights into the social and cultural life of northern and central India during the Gupta era. So if we talk about Kalidas' work, so Kalidas was not only a writer, not only the one person who tells us about the different type of novels or something, but it also tells us about the different type of stories. And on the basis of that story, we get to know a lot about the society and the cultural life of that particular era, especially the Gupta era. Because whenever they are creating the story, they have to create the story related to that society only. Then let's talk more on this. Then comes Raja Tarangini. So this is a well-known book written by Kalhan and that covers the social and political life of Kashmir in the 12th century CE. Do remember this? This book is really important, guys, because they can directly ask you this question: that which of the following book depicts the social and political life of Kashmir in 12th century CE? So that was Raja Tarangini, and that was written by Kalhan. Then Charitas and biographies. So Charitas are the biographies written by court poets in admiration of their rulers, such as Harsh Charitra, written by Ban Bhatt in praise of King Harshvardhan. So basically, in the medieval era, we also get to know a lot of people writing the biographies of their kings. So this during the ancient time, Ban Bhatt, Harsh Charitra was the most important one. Do remember it was written by Ban Bhatt and not Harshvardhan. Harshvardhan was himself a writer, a novelist writer, but he did not write the Harsh Charitra. The books written by Harshvardhan were like Naganand, Ratnavali, Priyadarshika, and Harsh Charitra was written by Ban Bhatt. Then Sangam literature. So this is the earliest South Indian literature created by a group of poets, Sangam, and it contains vital information on the social, economic, and political lives of people living in deltaic Tamil Nadu. This Tamil literature contains literary gems such as Sila Padikaram and Mani Mekalai. So these type of this Sangam literature is the most important one. If you are getting a hard question on literature, you will be getting it from Sangam literature. So it becomes a very important topic to understand and to read out and at least to remember some of the books and their writers. So we will also talk about it later. Now, prehistoric periods in India according to tools. So ancient history can be divided into different periods according to the tools used by the people then. Because earlier they used stone, then they started using copper, then they started using bronze, then they started using iron. So on the basis of that also we can divide the history. So like here you can see in this chart. So prehistory basically divided into three types of ages. One is the Stone Age, another one is the Chalcolithic Age, one is the Iron Age. Chalcolithic was from 3000 to 500 BC and Iron Age was from 1500 to 200 BC. Chalcolithic basically represents the era where the copper was primarily used. Now let's first of all talk about the Stone Age. So Stone Age is further divided into Paleolithic, Mesolithic and Neolithic. Paleolithic was old Stone Age around 5 lakh BC to 10,000 BC. Then Mesolithic, later Stone Age, and that was from 10,000 to 4,000 BC. And Neolithic age, that is the New Stone Age, was from 6000 BC to 1000 BC. Then, if we talk about the Paleolithic, so Paleolithic is further divided into Lower Paleolithic culture, 5 lakh to 1 lakh BC, Middle Paleolithic culture, 1 lakh to 40,000 BC, and Upper Paleolithic culture, 40,000 to 10,000 BC. It is divided on the basis of the uh, things that are learned by the human at that time and the type of tools that they are modifying at that time. Let's talk about Stone Age. The Stone Age is the prehistoric period, that is the period before the development of the script. Therefore, the main source of information of this period is the archaeological excavation. Robert Bruce Foote is the archaeologist who discovered the first Paleolithic tool in India, the Pallavaram hand axe. So basically, the first time a type of a hand axe was particularly discovered, and the particularly discovered in Pallavaram, and this was the first Paleolithic tool, and it was discovered by Robert Bruce Foote. And This is that particular thing that tells us a lot about that time. We can get to know that from which particular period this X belonged to. And these are the main source of information, as I was saying, along with the script. Now, let's talk about the Paleolithic age, the Old Stone Age. So, Paleolithic period is an ancient cultural stage of human technological development characterized by the creation and use of rudimentary chipped stone tools. The Paleolithic period was also characterized by the manufacture of small sculptures, example carved stone, statues of women, clay figurines of animals, and other bone and ivory carving and painting, incised designs and reliefs on cave walls. So these are the era of Paleolithic period. So basically two type of information are there. One is the figures of animals and bones and ivories of that time, ivory carvings that were created, paintings that were created, and apart from that, the tools, the type of tools that were created at that time from the type of stones and the type in which they were cut and introduced to use for killing and other main characteristics of the Paleolithic age. So the Indians were said to be the Negrito race and lived in the open air, river valleys, caves, and rock shelters. So particularly, do remember this term. So Indians of that time were known as Negrito race, and they used to live in open air, river valleys, caves, and other areas like rock shelters. Like Bhimbetka is the primary example. They were foragers, eating wild fruits and vegetables, and survived on hunting. That is a simple thing to understand. There was no understanding of homes, pottery, or agriculture. It was not until later that they found fire. In the Upper Paleolithic age, there is evidence of art in the forms of painting, like the Bhimbetka. Humans used unpolished rough stones like hand axe, choppers, blades, burins, and scrapers. Paleolithic men are also known as quartzite men in India because their stone tools were composed of quartzite, a hard rock. So basically, these are the things of that time that were being used. So do remember that particularly during the Paleolithic age, the quartzite was the type of stone primarily used to create tools of that time, like hand axe, choppers, blades, and etc. And that's it in this session, guys. I will meet you in the next session, and we will discuss more on this Stone Age and other things related to it. And till the time we meet, bye bye. Take care, everyone, and see you soon.